They whispered behind glass, called your thoughts unstable, your fire uncontainable. They couldn't comprehend the rhythm of your rage, so they named it madness, labeled your intensity as imbalance. The world has always feared what it can't frame. You walked through rooms with unspoken truths vibrating beneath your skin, and they called it delusion because it rattled their illusions. They saw your sleepless nights not as ambition, but affliction. Your silence wasn't mystery to them, it was danger. And in their eyes, your defiance wasn't strength, it was a malfunction. But you kept moving, didn't you? Through their diagnosis of your identity, through their cheap seats commentary and amateur dissections of your soul, they named you insane, because sanity, for them, is compliance. You refused to fold. That's what made you threatening, not your chaos, your clarity. They studied you like a specimen when you bled originality. They watched you with sterile eyes, dissecting your hunger like it was a pathology. You weren't loud. You were loud enough. Just enough to be unsettling. Just enough to not be ignored. And the truth is, they wanted you to be crazy. Because if you were mad, they were safe. If you were broken, their normalcy was intact. But every move you made shattered the mirror they stared into. That's why they recoiled. Not because you were unstable, but because you were certain. Certainty in a world built on masks is more terrifying than any scream. You were a mirror with no distortion. That level of reflection forces confrontation. You weren't unstable. You were unwilling to fake stillness. That's not madness. That's warfare. They called you dangerous because you refused to domesticate your genius. You didn't dilute your thoughts to fit the room. You didn't trim your edges to make others comfortable. And that refusal, that relentless commitment to truth, it scared them. Because deep down, everyone wants to be free. But freedom looks ugly when you've been caged too long. And you were a wild thing. You turned pain into blueprint, shadows into maps. You were designing while they were still debating. You were building something from the wreckage of your own history. That's what made them whisper. That's what made them label you. Because you escaped the conditioning. You found a way out. And those still trapped will always mock the ones who dig tunnels. They'll never admit it, but their laughter was laced with envy. Not because you were entertaining, but because you were unpredictable. And unpredictable people can't be controlled. You didn't play by the script. You rewrote the genre. You weren't just thinking differently, you were existing differently. That made you a liability in their safe little systems. They need you boxed, filed, defined, but you were a question mark with teeth. They saw your passion and mistook it for madness because they've never felt anything that deep and lived to talk about it. You didn't just survive the fire, you studied it, memorized the heat, charted the patterns. Now you walk with flames in your footsteps and they call it divine. But they forget. These are the same flames they once tried to drown. You weren't insane. You were awake in a world drunk on delusion. And that kind of wakefulness burns. It isolates. It cuts through the noise like a blade, and suddenly you're the only one not clapping at the circus. That's what sanity looks like when the world is sick, lonely. You felt everything too much, saw too far, connected too many dots. That's not dysfunction, that's data overload. The mind collapses when it carries what others ignore. You weren't fragile, you were just overinformed. You bore the weight of truth before you had the words for it, and so they labeled you. Easier to call you broken than to call the system what it is. A lie stacked on lies. You were never crazy, you were prematurely correct. Now look around. The ones who mocked you are quoting you. The ones who rolled their eyes are raising their glasses. But don't be fooled. This applause is a late arrival. They didn't change. They adapted. Society has a habit of recycling what it once crucified. And you stayed true through the exorcism. Through the cold seasons where your own reflection felt foreign. Through the chapters where every breath was resistance, you kept speaking, even when no one listened. And that's what makes this moment yours. Not the recognition, not the accolades, but the knowing that you stayed with yourself long enough to be found by those who finally understand. They're calling you remarkable now because the results are undeniable, not because they see you, but because they can no longer deny what you've built. You turned your torment into tactics. You transformed your scars into scripts, and now they echo your words in rooms they once banned you from. But let that be a lesson. Greatness never begins with praise. It starts in silence, in ridicule, in exile, and you carried all of it. Carried the weight of being right. Too early. Carried the burden of seeing what others couldn't. And through it all, you didn't fold into their expectations. You expanded beyond their reach. Psychologically, they needed you to fail. Your failure would validate their mediocrity. Your collapse would be proof that the path less traveled leads nowhere. But when you refused to fall, when you kept rising, reinventing, recalibrating, you became evidence. Proof that there is another way. That madness and mastery are often mistaken in their infancy. That revolutionaries always wear the face of insanity before history corrects the record. You were their contradiction, their living plot twist. And now that you've arrived, their stories must adjust to include you, even if it kills their comfort. But don't soften now. Don't return to digestible, just because the world has acquired the taste. Keep your flavor wild, your rhythm jagged, your truth unfiltered. Because those who once feared you will try to contain you now with compliments. They'll invite you in, not to celebrate you, but to tame you. Don't be tamed. Let your mind stay untethered. Let your soul remain unlicensed. You didn't fight your way through madness to become someone else's pet prop. You were born to disturb the pattern, to remind the world that sanity built on submission isn't worth the cost. They always saw you. That was never the problem. They just couldn't stand the reflection. Toxic people are blind only when pretending to be. They studied you in silence, calculated the pace of your progress, the heat of your ambition, the light in your voice when you spoke about what you were building. And the more they sensed something they couldn't control, the more they sharpened their passive aggression. The cuts were always subtle. Backhanded praise, strategically timed doubt, fake concern masquerading as advice. Are you sure you can handle all that? Must be nice having so much free time to chase hobbies. They never attacked your achievements directly. That would have made them obvious. Instead, they chipped away at your certainty, bit by bit, so that eventually, when you looked in the mirror, it was their insecurities staring back. They feared your becoming, not because it hurt them, but because it exposed them. Your elevation illuminated their stagnation. Your growth forced them to confront their decay. And in that spotlight, they had two choices: rise with you or sabotage you. But sabotage is effortless for the hollow. They don't have to strike you down. They just delay your flight. With silence when you win, with distraction when you focus, with laughter when you share something sacred. You felt it, didn't you? That sting when you brought them your joy and they dressed it in sarcasm. You handed them your light and they dimmed the room just enough to make you question it. But that doubt you felt was never yours. It was inherited. Their gift to you, poisoned and polished, and you wore it for longer than you should have. Toxic people master the art of subtle theft. They don't steal your work. They steal the meaning behind it. They convince you it wasn't that special, that anyone could have done it, that your wins were luck, your insights were recycled, your creativity a phase. And while you were too busy defending your right to feel proud, they were siphoning the energy you needed to keep building. That's how they survive, by ensuring no one around them feels full. They cannot coexist with self-assuredness. It terrifies them. They dress their envy in indifference and pretend their silence is neutrality. But the truth? Every milestone you reached burned them from the inside. Every step forward you took made them feel smaller, not because you were stepping on them, but because you were stepping away. You didn't notice at first. That's how they work. They blend their bitterness with familiarity. You assumed it was care. You mistook their proximity for protection. But in reality, they were holding a leash. And the moment you started running too fast, too far, they tugged, with guilt, with nostalgia, with memories engineered to keep you obedient. Remember where you came from. You're changing. They use the past as a weapon, as if transformation is betrayal, as if evolution is arrogance. You were never arrogant. You were hungry, and they hated that about you because you saw more, not in the world, but in yourself. That self-vision, that's what they couldn't tolerate, because they never had it. And rather than develop their own, they tried to dismantle yours. But the game always changes when you disappear. The moment you stop explaining yourself. The moment you stop offering front-run seats to people who only came to critique the show. That silence, it terrifies them. Because toxic people depend on access. Your energy was their fuel, your attention their oxygen. And once cut off, they suffocate. But they won't show it, not at first. They'll mock you from a distance, make jokes, tell others you think you're too good now. But late at night, behind their performance, they scroll through your progress. Watch your ascent from the shadows. And with every new level you reach, regret starts whispering, "What if I hadn't doubted them? What if I had supported them?" But it's too late, because what they tried to shrink has now outgrown every room they ever tried to contain it in. Now they see it. The thing they kept denying. Your success, your glow, your resilience. But they can't congratulate you. That would require integrity. So they do the only thing left. Rewrite history. I always believed in you. I was just trying to push you to be better. But their memory doesn't match your wounds. Your bones remember every silence. Your heart remembers every dismissal. Your skin remembers the absence of applause. And now that you've built something sacred, something solid, you finally see the pattern clearly. Their love was always conditional. Their loyalty, performative. They were never rooting for you. They were rooting for your dependence. And here's the cruel beauty of it. The more they realize what they lost, the more they pretend they never had it. They retreat into denial, paint themselves as the victim. They'll say you left them behind, that fame changed you, that success corrupted you. But they'll never say the truth. That they pushed you away, that their inability to celebrate you was the real reason for the distance. Toxic people never admit they were the poison. They'd rather label you ungrateful than face the truth of their own inadequacy. But it doesn't matter anymore. Because you no longer need their validation. You've created your own language, your own kingdom. And in that kingdom, their voice holds no weight. There's a kind of ache that comes with realization. Not for what you lost, but for how long you tolerated less. You'll grieve the versions of you that bent backwards, that explained themselves, that dimmed to be palatable. But don't linger in that grief. Use it. Use it as fuel to build boundaries so high that only the worthy can climb. Use it to sharpen your standards, to recognize the difference between those who feed your fire and those who fear it. Toxic people fear warmth they can't control. They'll call it arrogance. But you'll call it home. Because now, finally, your flame belongs to you. Let them watch, let them scroll, let them whisper to each other in bitter corners. You don't owe them closure. You don't owe them softness. What you owe is to the version of you who survived them.